It was a bright Monday morning at Silver Oak Bank, a cornerstone of Central Austin's bustling financial district. The air hummed with the usual rhythms of a busy workday, tapping keyboards, murmured conversations, and the occasional ringing phone. Miss Karen Spencer, the newly appointed branch manager, adjusted her blazer in the reflective glass of her office. Today, she thought, would be her chance to prove she deserved the prestigious role she had worked so hard to land. As the front doors swung open, a tall black man entered, his steps measured and composed. Dressed in a simple yet clean shirt and jeans, he exuded an air of quiet confidence that contrasted with the hurried energy of the bank. His name was Jonathan Blake, though few recognized him without his signature suit. He preferred it that way. Jonathan approached the main counter, where Karen had positioned herself to oversee operations. Her eyes flickered toward him, her expression hardening almost imperceptibly as she gave him a once-over. "Good morning," Jonathan said politely, his voice calm and steady. "I'd like to deposit a significant amount into my account." Karen's brows knitted slightly. Her tone was clipped, bordering on dismissive. "We'll need to verify your account details first," she said, folding her arms. "Of course," Jonathan replied, pulling out his wallet and handing over a sleek business card alongside his account information. The name Jonathan Blake and the logo of Blake Enterprises were embossed in silver. Karen's eyes lingered on the card, her disbelief barely concealed. She leaned closer to her computer, typing in his account number. The screen loaded, displaying numbers that made her heart skip a beat. But instead of awe or respect, suspicion darkened her features. "Are you certain these details are accurate?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "Absolutely," Jonathan affirmed. "You may want to prepare for the transfer. It's a deposit of $200 million. Karen froze. For a moment she didn't respond, then leaned back with a skeptical laugh. "Listen, sir, we don't tolerate scams here. If this is some kind of joke, I suggest you leave before I call security." Jonathan's demeanor remained composed, though a flicker of disappointment crossed his face. "This is no joke," he said, keeping his voice firm yet respectful. "Perhaps you should verify again or speak with someone higher up." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Scammers always come prepared with fake business cards. I've seen this trick before." She motioned toward a nearby guard. "You think I don't know how these schemes work? You won't get far here." A hush fell over the room as the interaction caught the attention of customers and staff alike. Whispers rippled through the space, some murmuring their disbelief, while others exchanged knowing glances. Jonathan's calm didn't waver. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. But Karen cut him off, her voice rising. "People like you always think you can game the system," she snapped. "You really expect me to believe you just walked in here with $200 million to deposit? Get out of my bank!" The room went silent, a heavy tension filling the air. Just then, the sound of deliberate footsteps echoed across the marble floor. A tall man in a sharp navy suit entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. Karen turned, startled. "Mr. Carter!" she exclaimed, her tone shifting to one of deference. "I was just about to handle this situation. This man claims to have $200 million to deposit. I was calling security." Mr. Carter, the regional director of Silver Oak Bank, raised an eyebrow and folded his hands. "And why would you need to call security for that?" he asked calmly. Karen stammered. "Because he's obviously lying. Just look at him." Mr. Carter's eyes moved to Jonathan, and recognition lit up his face. His demeanor softened immediately. "Mr. Blake," he said warmly, extending a hand. "It's been far too long. Welcome back. Andrew," Jonathan replied, shaking his hand with a small smile. I see things haven't changed much. Karen's jaw dropped. You know him? Of course, Mr. Carter said, his voice firm. He turned to the crowd, his tone sharp and authoritative. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Mr. Jonathan Blake, the owner of Blake Enterprises. He's not just a client, he's our largest investor, and the reason this bank survived the last financial crisis. Gasps echoed through the bank, and all eyes turned to Karen, whose face had gone ashen. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Miss Spencer, Mr. Carter said, his voice steely, you've been here for all of 2 weeks, and this is how you treat our clients? I'm appalled. Karen's lips trembled. I didn't know, she muttered. He didn't look the part. Mr. Carter's gaze turned icy. And what exactly does someone with $200 million look like? The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's cheeks flushed with humiliation, and her knees seemed to buckle under the weight of the moment. Miss Spencer, pack up your things, Mr. Carter said. You're fired, effective immediately. This behavior has no place at Silver Oak Bank. Tears welled in Karen's eyes as she stumbled away, her humiliation complete. The crowd broke into applause, a cathartic release for what they had witnessed. Mr. Blake turned to Mr. Carter, his voice calm but resolute. I appreciate how you handled this, Andrew. Let's proceed with the deposit. Of course, Mr. Blake, Mr. Carter said, gesturing toward a private office. As they walked away, the whispers among the customers grew louder. For all who watched, the lesson was clear. Never judge a book by its cover. The ripple effects of the confrontation at Silver Oak Bank extended far beyond its marble walls. Videos of the incident, captured by stunned customers, began circulating online within hours. Jonathan Blake's composed demeanor contrasted starkly with Karen Spencer's prejudice-filled outburst. Social media exploded with outrage. Hashtags like #respect all clients and #banking, while black trending nationwide. Jonathan watched the storm unfold with mixed emotions. From the quiet sanctuary of his office at Blake Enterprises, he scrolled through countless comments, some supportive, others heartbreaking. The incident had struck a nerve, bringing to light stories from countless others who had faced similar discrimination in their daily lives. Jonathan knew he had to respond. But how? Meanwhile, at Silver Oak Bank, Mr. Carter called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. The air in the conference room was thick with tension. What happened yesterday was an embarrassment, Mr. Carter began, his voice firm but measured. Not just to this branch, but to our entire organization. Silver Oak Bank is built on trust, and we cannot afford to let that trust erode. One senior employee, clearly uncomfortable, cleared her throat. Sir, some of the staff feel that Karen made an honest mistake. Mr. Carter's gaze sharpened. A mistake? He echoed, his tone icy. Tell me, what part of accusing a man of fraud based solely on his appearance qualifies as an honest mistake? The room fell silent. No one dared to respond. This is not just about Karen Spencer, Mr. Carter continued. This is about a culture that tolerates implicit bias, and if we don't root it out now, incidents like this will happen again. As the meeting concluded, Mr. Carter reached out to Jonathan personally. Mr. Blake, he said over the phone, I want to apologize again on behalf of Silver Oak Bank, and I'd like to invite you to work with us on creating a comprehensive training program for our staff. We need to do better. Jonathan paused, considering the weight of the offer. I appreciate the gesture, Andrew, he said finally. But this isn't just about training your staff. It's about changing how people think and behave. That takes more than a seminar. It takes commitment. Andrew nodded, even though Jonathan couldn't see him. You have my word. We'll start by holding ourselves accountable. Jonathan's story, however, wasn't over. In the coming weeks, he decided to use his platform to spark a broader conversation about prejudice and accountability. He partnered with several advocacy groups to launch a campaign called Judged by the Cover, aimed at combating discrimination in professional spaces. The campaign's videos and testimonials went viral, featuring not just Jonathan's story, but countless others like it. The impact was immediate. Banks, corporations, and even schools began reaching out, asking for resources and training to address systemic biases. Jonathan found himself at the forefront of a movement he hadn't intended to lead, but couldn't ignore. Back at Silver Oak Bank, the atmosphere had changed. Staff who had once turned a blind eye to prejudice now found themselves questioning their own assumptions. Conversations about bias and respect became a regular part of staff meetings. And while the changes didn't happen overnight, they were real and tangible. For Jonathan, the experience was bittersweet. The sting of Karen's words lingered, but so did the overwhelming support he received from strangers around the world. He often thought about what might have happened if Mr. Carter hadn't intervened that day. But instead of dwelling on the past, he focused on building a future where no one else would have to endure what he did. As he prepared for yet another speaking engagement, Jonathan glanced at a note pinned to his desk. It was from a young girl who had seen his story online. In crayon, she had written, "Thank you for showing the world that everyone matters." Jonathan smiled. For all the challenges, moments like this made it worth it. The months following the incident were transformative, not just for Silver Oak Bank, but for Jonathan Blake and the wider community. The story had become more than a viral moment. It had ignited a conversation that refused to fade into the background. Jonathan stood on the stage of a packed auditorium, his voice steady but filled with conviction. Behind him, a large screen displayed the words, "Judged by the Cover, a movement for change." The audience, a mix of corporate leaders, educators, and community activists, hung onto his every word. That day at Silver Oak Bank, Jonathan began, wasn't just about me. It was about a system that has failed countless individuals who never had the chance to tell their story. But here's the thing. Change starts with awareness, and awareness leads to action. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. We all have a responsibility to question our biases, to challenge the assumptions we make about others, and to build environments where everyone is treated with respect. The applause was thunderous, but Jonathan's mind drifted to a quieter moment. After the campaign launched, he had received a letter from Karen Spencer. It was unexpected and filled with regret. "Dear Mr. Blake," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know how deeply ashamed I am of my actions. Losing my job forced me to confront the prejudices I didn't even realize I held. I'm working to be better, and I hope one day my story can serve as a lesson to others." Jonathan had read the letter several times, each word a reminder of how far-reaching the impact of that day had been. He had chosen not to respond directly, but to let his actions speak for themselves. Silver Oak Bank had also undergone significant changes. Under Mr. Carter's leadership, the institution implemented robust diversity and inclusion programs, becoming a model for other financial institutions. The staff, once indifferent, now took pride in fostering an environment of respect and accountability. As Jonathan stepped off the stage, a young boy approached him, clutching a program from the event. "Mr. Blake," the boy said shyly, "I want to be like you when I grow up, someone who helps people see what's right." Jonathan knelt down, meeting the boy's eyes. "You already are," he said with a warm smile. Just remember, kindness and courage can change the world. The boy beamed, and Jonathan felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every step. As he left the auditorium, Jonathan glanced at the sunset painting, the city in hues of gold and crimson. It was a reminder that even after the darkest moments, light could break through if only we dared to make it happen. What's your takeaway from Jonathan Blake's inspiring story? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that move the heart and spark change.